Well, back in 2007, I did 2 nights at Shepherd's Bush Empire, and that was called Feeding the 5,000. And that's where I did basically the whole of the album, apart from Sound of Free Speech. I did the record in its entirety live on stage, which even when we was Crass, we never did that, because by the time Feeding came out, we'd already added new songs, which later became Stations. So I did that, and that was meant to be a one-off, unique thing, but it ended up being 2 nights. And then about a week after I'd done that, finished it, you know, I was like, oh, that's it, I can sort of retire now, and all this. And I started getting phone calls like, Steve, come and do it in Berlin, Steve, come and do it in Los Angeles, Steve, come and do it here, and all this kind of stuff. And the bloke who'd been promoting it, you know, Chris G, was, you know, on the phone all the time. Oh, you know, got all these offers, and I was sort of, for 30 seconds, I was tempted. And then I thought, no, I can't go back on my word. You know, I've got to stay true to something that's got to be me. And because the idea of that, you know, that Shepherd's Bush thing was that it was a one-off and it will never be repeated. And it was such a wonderful, you know, experience. I think it would be a shame to do that. It would spoil it. You know, that would be like jumping on the bandwagon and flogging a dead horse. So I was like thinking. And then, you know, eventually talking to people, and then, you know, talking to yourself, and, you know, plus I didn't have a clue of how to do it. You know, I knew that I had to get someone in to basically look after me, because I'm useless when it comes to finance. And I will either undersell myself, or I'll be ridiculous, you know, because I just don't know how the bloody thing works. I'll let things slide, you know. If it was left to me, there would be no transport, you know. It would be, you know, in the back of a Morris Minor going up the M1 sort of thing. So, and me thinking, and, you know, at the end of it, you know, Steve, here's your cigarettes, what you wanted. Oh, thanks, is that it? Oh, yeah, and here's a £5. Oh, cheers, you know, and then I'd go off really happy. So, no more of that, right? So, and then but also talking to people, and then going on that thing called the internet, and then just seeing how global it was, and suddenly I realised that, you know, there were so many people out there who never got the chance to see Crass live, and never will, because we're never going to reform. Definitely not. And that they, you know, they never got a chance to see it live. And I was like, well, it'd be really good to sort of do that for, you know. It's a little bit, if I can do it, it's a little bit selfish of me not to do it in a funny way. And what's wrong, you know, I knew I'd taken such a pasting from the critics and stuff at Shepherd's Bush, you know, and that really, my self-confidence just went out the fucking window, you know. It really just hurt me. I was not expecting. I know people can be bastards, but I mean, there are some real shits out there, and one in particular, and I haven't forgotten. You know, he's been in hospital already. He got done over, not by me or anything to do with me. But you know, a little smirk when I had an extra special drink to that at Christmas. I think because what I was doing was daring to tread on the toes, you know, or treading on the corns of, you know. But I think because Crass stopped in 1984 or whenever it was, and it was, no matter what Penn says, you know, Penny Rambo, he always says, oh yeah, we were preparing to, but I don't remember it like that at all, because I remember talking to Penny Rambo about, you know, Penn, we're doing a countdown to 1984 on the catalogue numbers. He went, yeah. I said, what happens if we sort of go beyond 1984? Do we sort of go minus or something? And he went, oh, who's seen when we get there? So as far as I was concerned, we were going to go on. But that night after that gig in wherever it was in Wales, and Andy Palmer just said, oh, that's it, I want to leave the band, you know. And I was like, and I think it took about half an hour down the road, and I think it was me and Eve Libertine maybe, and maybe Joy as well, and I think all three of us went, actually I was thinking of, you know, doing, and the way we all sort of resigned to it. I mean, there was a bit, when we got back, there was a bit of chat about it, oh, should we continue, and, you know, Andy, you sure? But it wasn't really like, oh, Andy, don't leave, you know. I think we were all sort of like, yeah, it's time to pack it in, you know, it's just too long. So that happened, and I think because of that, and you didn't hear or see anything from Crass for a long time after that, apart from records. This sort of, people build up this myth sort of thing, you know, and it's like the sort of image of it becomes bigger than the actual thing. And certainly with the internet, suddenly there were people talking to me, you know, about Crass and stuff, you know, in my local village, and I was like, you know, even the woman who sells me the paper, she used to be in the Crass when she was at school, and all this. It's like really weird. And so I think, you know, because I said, oh, I'm going to do Feeding the 5, Yeah, but you're doing it without the rest of, you know, oh, you're breaking the sacred thing, you know, the myth and the legend and the thing. Well, and the thing that kept me going was, well, Crass existed to blow those myths and legends, you know, and I was a bit fed up because obviously when people want to talk to ex-Crass members about Crass, the first place they'll go to is Dale House, which means they'll be doing an interview with Penny Rambo and probably G. And Penny Rambo and G's idea of what Crass was or is or whatever is pretty different from mine. So all the time I was seeing these sort of interviews and their version of it, and if you say it enough time, it becomes sort of true, concrete, you know, and sort of, you know what people are. Don't matter if you say don't believe what you read in the papers, people will still believe it, you know. And I thought, well, this is a good chance for me to put my version across of what I feel about it, and it's not going to be a sort of stuffy old, you know, sitting around a cup of tea sort of very involved thing. It's going to be an in your face, have a bit of a laugh and get a bit pissed and sort of celebrate it. It was good, wasn't it? Yeah, that's all right, yeah. What did I get? You know, a real horrible sort of spiteful slating. So that put me off, going back to the original question, that put me off of doing anything again. You know, I was like, oh, you know, it just ain't worth it. But then, you know, as I say, once I'd seen on the internet that a lot of people really wanted me to do it and were really interested. And I was like, you know, for once, you know, for once and once only. Then, of course, as you know, I had the problem of like, well, how do I prove to people? I'm not going to do a Sex Pistols or a Jimmy Percy or, you know, Sham 69 or a Damned thing and go, you know, go on. I thought, well, I'll call it The Last Supper. And I've sworn to everybody, and I'll say it here on camera now, you know, after the last gigs that I do, which will be in November, in London, I will never ever perform Crass songs live on stage again. That's it. Finish. You know, if you don't get to see it, too bad. Sorry, because I am not going to go back on my word. As tempting it may be, you know, and that's going to be really difficult because I know as soon as that last chord is played, I'll get home, shut the door, kettle on, cup of tea, phone call. Steve will offer you 50 billion to come and play the Levi sort of conjunction in Bogota. I can't do it. Bugger! I'll just go and wash up down the pub again, you know, it's like, so it's going to be really difficult, you know what I mean? There's got to be some bastard offers me a load of money, so I'm not only doing it for the money anyway, so, yeah, but I've sworn it's a promise I've made, because I think, I don't want to, I think I had to be very careful when I was like, well, you know, what will I present? I can't do the feeding thing again, so I'll do my favourites, and as you know, we put out on the internet, look, if you've got favourite songs you want to hear, then we'll consider it. And funny enough, what people sent in was the ones that were in the set anyway, so we're all pretty similar. So yeah, I feel sort of justified in doing it. You know, so it's got to be a one-off thing. It can't be repeated. But you know, it means, you know, it means that I'm going to places that I never went before, and it might seem strange. You know, I know people go, oh yeah, you're just fucking off to America. Yeah, but before that, we had Birmingham and Bristol and all that lot. I'd love to have done more. But the gigs just didn't come. I was very surprised that we didn't get any offers from Italy and from France, but maybe that was the fee that we were asking, which ain't that, you know, I don't think it's that extortionate. But and it's very difficult because Crass. See, again, you've got that problem where Crass was supposedly in a DIY thing. Well, we did it all ourselves. So I think the people who would really like to put it on are DIY merchants, and people ain't got a lot of money, and so I don't know.